Hello and welcome back. We're going to be concluding 2 Samuel chapter 5 today. We've had several messages in 2 Samuel chapter 5. We've seen David fully come into being king of all of Israel. We saw him last week enjoying the blessings that he had. He took the land back from the Jebusites. He moved into Jerusalem, calling it the city of David. Even the surrounding kings came and they sent carpenters and masons, and he built a fortress and a home, and all is well. But today, the message is going to be seeking and listening. So maybe I'll open with this question. Are you a good listener? Well, there's different parts to that. We can hear the words back. And so perhaps we do hear, maybe if we had a quiz, sometimes with my wife, she'll say, "Did you hear me?" And I'll repeat it back. But she said, "But did you hear me?" In other words, did I really understand what she's saying? So there's different parts to listening. And it's kind of interesting how we can take listening for granted. I even read an academic paper on this recently about the art of listening, and there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. So in this one survey, 96% of the people believed they're pretty good listeners. Maybe, I often think I'm a good listener. Maybe you think you're a good listener. But maybe we don't always retain it, or maybe we certainly don't always hear it with understanding. We can be distracted. We can be thinking about, what we're going to say. We're quick to want to get our words in. Perhaps we just start to do a shortcut. We think we got an assumption of what the person's trying to say. So that can lead to miscommunication. So some suggestions are to remove distractions that are around us. Particularly don't make assumptions. This is a really hard one for me, allowing silence. Sometimes we might ask questions to make sure we understand. Well, you may say, why are you giving us the discourse on listening? Well, it's going to be important when we look at the message today. So I just wanted to say that for background to get us thinking about it. And there will be a couple of places where I think you'll see where it's relevant to our passage today. Well, as we said, we left off with David in a time of really great peace and blessing. I know as I look at the world today, given we're dealing with not as much peace, I'm longing for some peace. I'm hoping we can come to terms of peace. But even so, peace doesn't always last that long. And so we had seen last time about how David had overtaken the Jebusites, but now an old enemy's coming back in verse 17. And it says, "And when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to search for David. But David heard of it, and he went down to the stronghold. And now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim." So we have these moments of wonderful peace, the moments where things are easy. I wish they lasted longer than they did. It doesn't seem like we have much peace. And then the attacks come. An attack or attacks come. There's been a lot of history with the Philistines. In fact, if you remember Goliath, way back when David was a youth, Goliath was a representative of the Philistines, and there had been many battles in the time of King Saul with the Philistines. So they've been an old enemy of David, and of course, for the entire nation of Israel. The question is, what do we do when the attack comes? Well, one thing we see that he did is he went to the stronghold first before he did anything else. And he did that, though, with the purpose. And that purpose was to seek, to inquire of the Lord. He didn't just react. He wasn't full of pride since he had just defeated the Jebusites, like, I've got this. He instead asked the question. He sought the Lord. Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand? Now, there's a humbleness in this, a humbleness that he needed God's direction, a humbleness, he says, will you give them into my hand, not depending upon his own strength, thinking, well, God, I don't even need you. I can take them. And so before we maybe have our natural person reacting in our flesh, we need to seek the Lord. He went to the stronghold to have a place of quiet. And I want to just say, I could go back and show you from 1 Samuel, from 2 Samuel. It's part of David's life. Certainly when he was living in blessing, it was part of his life. He sought the Lord many times. He inquired of the Lord many times. It was more likely than not that he was going to do it. Now, there will be other times. We don't see him seeking the Lord for all the concubines. We don't see him seeking the Lord when he runs across Bathsheba. But when he's entering into these battles and these times, he is inquiring the Lord. It was the times of sin that he had not inquired the Lord. I ask you the same question. Think about your own life when you've gotten in trouble. Did you seek God on it? Or did you just kind of go on your own way? But this is back to that part of listening. He saw it, and that's important. It's important to pray. But it's also important to listen for the answer. Some people don't pray at all, but some pray, and it's a one-way street. Just, God, this is what I need. God, this is what I'm asking for. But it's important not just to spout those things out, but also to listen for the response. The Lord said to David, go up, for I will certainly give the Philistines into your hand. And so David came to Baal-perazim, and David defeated them there. And he said, the Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breaking flood. What was another habit of his? Not to take credit for himself. He said, the Lord has done this thing. He sought the Lord. He gave the Lord the acknowledgement that it was God who did it. It says, therefore, the name of that place is called Baal-perazim. And the Philistines left their idols there. They were an idolatrous nation. They thought those idols would help them get victory. They were probably pretty competent, just like the Jebusites. But those idols did not help them. And David and his men carried them away to get rid of them. So we need to listen. We need to listen. And then we need to follow. We follow what we're called to do. If we're going to ask God, if we're going to seek Him, if we're going to wait for the response, well, then we don't debate it. It could be like Jonah and say, well, I didn't know you were going to send me to Nineveh. I had another idea in mind. When you seek and you listen, we don't have a predetermined answer. We wait and see. Well, here comes another attack. And it says, and the Philistines came up yet again, and they spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And that sometimes happens. And when it does, I think we can face at least two temptations of the flesh. One is to get discouraged and to doubt and say, well, God, why did this happen again? I thought you gave me the victory, and now here I'm under attack again. And I don't think for us it's going to be the Philistines. Maybe it's a medical issue. Maybe it's a financial problem. Maybe it's some other, maybe it's a sin issue. Maybe it's just fill in the blank. But it keeps coming back and coming back. And you say, well, God, why is there another attack? Why is there still this problem? And so you can get discouraged. You can lose your faith. However, the other is to be presumptive and think, you know the way already. So David could have said, all right, I beat him once. I'll just do the same thing again. I got this now. I don't need to seek God. But he instead sought again. However, the answer was a surprising one. In fact, you might read it and say, huh? You know, God's asked me to do something that doesn't seem to make sense to me. And so when David inquired of the Lord, again, he did inquire of the Lord. He was not presumptive. He did not have doubt, but he wanted to make sure he got it right. Then God this time said a different answer. You shall not go up, but this time go to their rear. Instead of a front attack, go to do a back attack. And then come against them opposite the balsam trees. And when you hear the sound of marching and the tops of the balsam trees, then arouse yourself, for then the Lord has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines. Again, maybe in our natural person, we think, wow, I'm supposed to listen for this in the rustling in the trees, hear this sound in the trees. But here's the thing. There's not just a presumption of it, neither is there a formula. That's why I'm not, I like books that teach spiritual truths, but not ones that try to present a formula. Each of our situations is unique. Because something worked a time before, even for ourselves, or if it worked for someone else, we need to individually seek God. We need to individually inquire and listen. It's not as easy as just chucking a box, or you're reading a book, I did this, so that person did it, so I'll do it. Again, we're talking here about the same person, David, but the response was different. Now, we also should not seek, sometimes we get kind of excited about something, we can say, to the unusual, or maybe we're excited about something unusual. I don't think we should seek the unusual necessarily. But if that's what God has told us to do, by faith, we follow it through, even if it doesn't make sense to us. I think by and large, we don't have to seek strange or odd things, but if it so happens, it so happens. The important thing is, again, David sought, he listened, and he followed through with it. And so it says, and this is the end of 2 Samuel chapter 5. And David did as the Lord commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines from Geba to Gezer. The conclusion is, here we see David in his might and his strength and his faith. He did not debate. He did not hesitate. He simply did as he was told. He sought. He was able to seek the Lord. He listened. He heard what God said, and he obeyed. We see that he did it two different ways, and in that he got the victory, and he was always quick to acknowledge that it was God who gave him the victory. So how can we apply this for ourselves today? Are you under attack in any capacity? Attacks often are not by the military. We have attacks in our emotions, in our spirits, in our health, in so many ways. Sometimes it's not so much an attack, but we're just not sure what we need to do. Wisdom is a powerful thing and not to be taken for granted. But sometimes we rely too much on our earthly wisdom or our natural intellect. Regardless, is there a matter in which you need to seek the Lord? First and foremost, if you've got something, anything, whatever it may be, I encourage you. The Philistines were a mighty army. It could have been a very quick end to David's kingship. But there's obstacles, there's enemies, there's attacks, there's problems, there's trouble all around us. So if there's a matter you need to seek the Lord, then seek Him. But then let's apply those listening skills. First, we may need to apply it with our spouse, our friends, our partners, our workplace, and other parts of our life, certainly. But first and foremost, are you listening for God? Are you able to put the distractions aside? Will you be silent? Will you wait for the answer and not make an assumption of what you think the answer will be? That's what I think is so interesting about the second application. David may have naturally thought, well, I'll do it again. He said, nope, go around to the rear, listen to the balsam trees. And then, whatever it is that God replies to you, will you do what you hear? Will you do it? Be prepared. If you ask and you listen, don't do all that and then say, well, never mind. That's not the response I wanted. Whatever you do, when you seek and when you hear, then you need to do it and trust God with it. And then when God provides the victory, because if He's called for it, He'll do it, then you acknowledge Him. And you say, God, thank you for what you've done. Remember, these are not just lessons for King David. Each and every one of them is a lesson for us today. I encourage you, if there's something in your life, follow the same principles that David followed here.